Hey there guys, and welcome back to my Kerbal Space Program series. Between earthquakes and thunderstorms and other apocalyptic events that's happening here in real life, I'm just about managing to squeeze in a few more videos, so let's have a look at what I'm going to be building for this episode. I'm going to be making, as close to life as I can, a Vostok 1 probe to take Jebediah Kerman into space. He'll be the first Kerbin ever to go out of the atmosphere. And yeah, I'm trying to make this look as real to life as possible. The real one was a ball with a engine behind it, so that's what I'm going to be trying to do as well. I'm going to keep it really simple because obviously I want to keep it like it's a primitive piece of technology, so I'm going to be staying away from autopilots and the like, and no SAS, which will make it a real slug to fly, but you know, there we go. And I'm playing with the 2.5 meter parts here for the engine because I want it to be more in scale, but that's actually going to provide me a bit of problem when it comes to trying to fit the fairings because the ball is 2.5 meters, just like the fairing, and as you can see, there's a bit of a clip there with the door. So what I end up doing is making a smaller piece and then enclosing that within a fairing. The whole process is a little bit infuriating with this. It's I'm a lot more used to using the crew capsule that came default with Kerbal Space Program. But yeah, it doesn't look too bad on top of this rocket that we've been using before. Just got to play around with it a bit to get it all to fit in place. But there we go. It looks quite strange with the fairing off. But yeah, with the extended part, because there's a wider version of the 2.5, it all does fit okay. And then I'm just putting a bit of scatter on the outside, like radio antennas and things, just to make it look a bit more utilitarian. But there we go. And I've got rid of one of the stages, the booster stage at the top, because it really wouldn't be necessary, especially seeing as I've got fuel in the capsule. And again, I'm playing with the separation of the side tanks because they're still smacking into each other. Looks spectacular, but it's highly dangerous. So yeah, there we go. And this here is my Woodstock rocket on the launch pad. And as you can see in the bottom right hand corner, we have a Kerbal inside it. That's Jebediah Kerman. He's all ready to go. Throttles up, it's too late now, Jebediah. And he's on his way. Now, there's a lot of misinformation about what happened on the original Vostok launch, primarily because the Russians were incredibly secretive, and they haven't helped themselves out by saying that Yuri Gagarin was the first person to complete a space flight. They had to lie to an international organization who was basically judging the space race at that point to be eligible to have called yourself doing a space flight, to have that kind of badge of honor internationally recognized by third-party countries. You had to come back with your vehicle. It was launching, completing a time outside of the atmosphere, and coming back with your vehicle. Now, the way that Yuri Gagarin did it was that he had to parachute from a certain height. He had like a seat that slid out the back of the rocket, which meant that he technically, according to the standards of the time, never went into space. Or he went into space, but he never completed a space flight. Small distinction, but let's just have a look at the separation. So close, just tip-touched there. And, oh crap, I think there's a staging problem there. Yes, there is, or... No, okay, that's something that sometimes happens with KW Rocketry. The decoupler doesn't want to decouple. I had to do it in the last video as well, just replaced it, and it worked, but the annoying thing is I've still got so much fuel in this. Throttling down is doing nothing, so just boost away, and yes, I think we're going to be okay. Incredibly tight for fuel, but should get there. Oh, and I've got a spin. No SAS on this, remember. This is going all kinds of wrong. Okay. Yeah. This one is not going to work, is it? So, what can we do? Try and recover it. Try and bring him back safely. The thing is, because I've got no gyroscope on here, I can only turn the spacecraft when the engine is fired up. And as well, it looks like he's going to be just shy of getting into space at all. I wanted to do an orbital flight. A suborbital flight would have been the secondary objective, but it looks like both of those aren't going to be possible because of this spin I've got. Oh god. Well, again, this is quite true to life. As I was saying, there was a lot of misinformation about the first launch. And like I say, because of that, there was a whole set of conspiracy theories about lost cosmonauts. And in particular, Vladimir Ilyushin, who was the son of a World War II airplane designer. Yeah, people believe that the first flight was either done a couple of days before, or it actually was Yuri Gagarin's flight, and it was him that went up. And the idea is that either he came back with his ship and was horribly mangled in the explosion that what happened when he returned to the planet, which would have been a legitimate space flight at that time because he came back with the ship, but because he was so basically almost dead at the end of it, the Soviet authorities decided to cover it up because it was incredibly, anti-machismo for them to bring one of their national heroes out like that. The other theory is that it was Yuri Gagarin's flight and he accidentally landed in China. This is Vladimir Ilyushin, and yeah, he was held prisoner by the Chinese for a long time, and that's why they wheeled out Yuri Gagarin. Again, these are all conspiracies, but yeah, the Russians didn't help themselves by eventually lying about what really did happen just for the sake of conforming to some kind of international standard on spaceflight. So I'm not sure if we're going to call this a simulation. He didn't go into space. Maybe we can call it a live test run of the systems. And as you can see with the spinning that happened, they're pretty bad, but I don't think I'm actually going to change it. I'm just going to go into the VAB and adjust the staging, but I'm not going to add anything to the vehicle. Let's just breeze through this quite quickly. I'll point out exactly what happened. On the right, you can see the staging. I think staging is backwards because I was unsure about how many solid rocket boosters I had so when I was arranging it. So the decoupler with the 2 solid rocket boosters and the decoupler with the 4 solid rocket boosters are in the wrong order. Pretty simple mistake, but obviously it meant that the upper stage decoupled before the engine below it had fired. So let's just put Jebediah back inside the ship, save it all for the next time. And okay, we're back on the launch pad. Jebediah Kerman is ready to go. Look at him there, his big green face. Throttle up and he's on his way. He's looking to be quite happy, which is incredible bravery because nobody knows what's going to happen to a Kerbal when we're getting that far up in zero G conditions. We could have done the testing, but it wasn't enough money in the budget. And besides, it's not the very Kerbal thing to do, is it, to test out? Just put him up there and see what happens. And yeah, this is a bit of a wobbly flight compared to my previous ones that I've done with smaller probes. I think it's because the fuel tank is quite a long, thin fuel tank, and I've not used any struts to tie it down. In addition to that, I've only got the SAS from the capsule. I've not put any extra on. I'm not actually sure if this capsule has SAS because it's a modded one. Okay, it's flying pretty straight now as the I'm pointing prograde, so I'm not fighting against the air. Climbing really fast, nearly at 20,000, which is when I want to do my full pitch over. Side tank's empty, and see, that was even worse than the last time, and I haven't changed anything. It must just be complete random chance, that's what I'm going to put it down to. Okay, and I'm really high now, so I'm going to pitch over because I don't want him going into a super high orbit. Okay, and just checking 72,000, so he's going to be going into space. We've still got so much fuel left. I'm going to push way over the horizontal line now to try and push the orbit into circularized state, because if you just point at the horizon, it's going to keep growing in front of you, and it's going to keep getting higher and higher and higher. So I'm pitching down to push the far side out. Okay, and this is out of fuel nearly. And as you can see, yeah, we've brought it down to about 60,000, which means that this next stage has got something to do to keep us out of the atmosphere. Okay, yeah, I think I've got enough power to do this now. Can go just above the horizon, and that should keep us out. And that's the fairing away, showing the bulbous round crew capsule inside. Oh, I didn't know it had this. This is pretty cool. Yeah, the mod, I think it's the inflatable habitat mod. The proper name will be in the description at the bottom. But yeah, this looks pretty cool. And when we get up to 70, I think I'm going to shut off the engine and then just glide to the highest point. Because yeah, that's running away from me now. So yeah, engine off, and let's just wait till we get to the top so I can circularize the orbit. And gotta be careful for collisions there. That would be embarrassing. So yeah, let's get rid of that, and we can use the propulsion here to circularize the orbit, because we've still got retro rockets there to deorbit us afterwards. We've got all this fuel just to get us into space solidly. But it handles like a dog. It's so bad. Should have had some kind of RCS on here or something, but I wanted to go for primitive, and primitive is what I got. So yeah, I can only turn when I have the engine fired up, because I'm using gimbal to make a rotation. But that means that I'm going to get higher and higher in the orbit just to rotate. So Jebediah is going to go a bit higher than he thought he was. Meanwhile, let's just have a look at what actually was in the Vostok probe, the machine that Yuri Gagarin was piloting. Even though he actually didn't do any piloting, he was just a passenger throughout the whole situation. He had a panel that could be taken to allow him to put inputs in for override, but other than that, he was just sitting there for the whole flight. Yeah, so something also to remember is that this wasn't a scientific experiment. It was purely a human endurance test. They'd sent up animals in the past, really quite horrible situations with dogs going up. But yeah, the actual time in orbit was one orbit, almost. He landed a bit southwest from the takeoff point. And this is another lie that the Russians told, is that they said that they launched from Baikonur, but they didn't. But what they did do is, after the launch, they changed the name of the city that they launched from to Baikonur, which is nice. And I'm just enjoying this cockpit. It's really well done. I think it's a bit out of scale with the Kerbals. It looks really massive inside, but I think it's incredibly pretty, and it's got all the information you need. It's just not very visual, but obviously you wouldn't expect that from quite a utilitarian cockpit. But yes, so we're on the far side now. It's half an orbit complete. And Jebediah's not really had much of a view for the whole experience. He's been either looking through a tiny porthole, or it's been pointed towards space. So, poor guy. And I'm not sure, I mean, I'm decelerating here, but I'm not going 100% for a re-entry burn at this point, but in the end I decide that I have to because I just don't have the rotational ability to do much more in orbit, so I'd better just return while I'm pointed in the right direction. Unfortunately, that means that because we took off in the daytime, did one orbit, it means we're going to be returning in the daytime for the first time. And I'm just reorientating so that I don't end up colliding into the fairing after I fire the retros. And of course the retros have to fire in the right direction as well, otherwise we'd end up speeding back up into orbit. So other than the stability, this craft actually works quite well. If I attached RCS or an SAS module, it would perform quite well. It's just the rotational ability that I'm lacking. And finally, Jebediah gets a nice view. And that was it. Because he's in an uncontrolled roll at the minute, which I'm trying to arrest at this moment. Point it back towards the right direction. As you can see now we're at 51,000 feet, or meters, I'm not sure, I think it's meters. Which means we're inside the atmosphere. So firing the retros to make sure we don't leave it again. And yeah, that's really low. We're definitely going to come down. Jebediah looks quite happy. He realizes what an important moment this is. And unlike Yuri Gagarin, he's got full control over this. So if it looks ridiculous, it's Jebediah doing it. And now we're orientating towards retrograde so that we can detach and have the heat shield facing forwards. It's a pretty ridiculously small heat shield for the size of the pod, but the shape of the pod actually is an amazing way to use a re-entry vehicle. Yuri Gagarin's own pod was just a ball with ceramic hexagonal tiles on the outside, because whichever orientation it faces, it's always perfectly aerodynamic for entering. And as they found on the space shuttle missions, a blunt tip is a lot better for re-entry than a spiked nose, which is why the space shuttle had like a snub nose at the front of it. But as you can see, we're coming in for re-entry now. The blue thing on top is the parachute, and it's facing in the right direction. 30,000 we should be seeing heating at the moment. Yeah, and we are doing. Very faint. Must have been terrifying the first time, because obviously you have some kind of theoretical knowledge of what's going to happen during re-entry, but it must have been terrifying to go through it for the first time. I mean, it must be terrifying any time, but especially for the first person to ever have any direct experience of it. Yeah, and the heat shield's doing okay. And at this stage, he wouldn't know if it was fire outside, something was on fire in his ship, or whether that was just the igniting shock wave around the ship of the re-entry effects. Oh, but I think that's from the sound effects alone. I think we're pretty much through it, and we are. The heating up has stopped on the capsule. So now we're just doing a ballistic arc, and I think it's probably going to be a splashdown. Yuri Gagarin landed by parachute over dry land, but we'll be doing a splashdown for this. Moving through the cloud layer, the hysterically fast cloud layer. I wonder if there's a way to slow that down to make it a bit more realistic. But yes, parachute deployed. And heat shield's gone just to give us a little bit more, less weight on the parachute. And here we go. And I'm actually going to try and make this true to life. In the last second, I'm going to parachute out with Jebediah. Now, I haven't got the parachute mod installed, so I'm not sure if he's going to survive it. But yeah, let's give it a go. He's going to have to go on EVA out of that little hatch at the bottom. And just jump so that we can say that it was like the real mission. Here we go. And he's alive? He is alive. I've got control of him. I can swim him around. But yeah, his helmet's full of water, and he'll gradually suffocate. So I just hope that the rescue party gets there quite soon. He's literally up to his eyeballs in this, but he doesn't seem too phased. He's that kind of Kerbal. Wow. Okay, I'm really happy with that. We managed to do pretty much a realistic kind of mission, and it was one that was using a craft that was basically true to life and how it was constructed, which is what I'm trying to do with this series. So yeah, I've just recovered Jebediah Kerman, and just going to recover the KERBSTOCK 1 from its location, which was just short of the continent, so that's almost a full orbit. Well, join me for my next video. I hope to have it up soon.